What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, we are going to start our deep dives for this NFL draft class for the Packers. And of course, no better place to start than with Quay Walker, the Packers' first pick in the draft, pick 22 overall. A player that I know was a little bit of a surprise to many people. I don't think a lot of people were expecting an off-ball linebacker with that first pick. I think even if Quay Walker went 28, it probably would have been a little bit of a lesser shock to the system, I guess. But I think at 22, it was a little bit of a surprise because, again, as I kind of talked about yesterday, Green Bay hasn't prioritized off-ball linebacker all that much. They finally did this offseason by paying Devondre Campbell big money to stay with the team, where they really going to now spend, a first-round pick, or their first-round pick nonetheless, on another off-ball linebacker. Well, the answer is clearly a resounding yes. Yes, they will, because Quay Walker is, of course, the newest member of your Green Bay Packers and the first pick taken by the Packers in this draft. So I'm going to do a deep dive like I did prior to the draft, going over all sort of the pros and cons. I did a much deeper dive on Walker. So, going into the draft, when I watched a lot of these players, I was usually watching about 3 to 4 games on a player. I watched 8 new games on Quay Walker for this. So, this is all fresh. This is all my notes directly from what I saw on tape. 7 of the games were using all 22. 1 game was using the TV copy cut up, but I felt like I got a really good feel for who Quay Walker is as a player. So we'll jump into all of those notes in just a second, but the basics on Walker: senior out of Georgia, 6'4", a little under 6'4", 241. He will actually turn 22 years old on Sunday as you're listening to this. So just a few days away from a happy birthday for Quay Walker. A 9.61 RAS score. Again, he tested up for 6'3", almost 6'4", is in the 94th percentile for off-ball linebackers, 74th percentile for weight, 75th percentile for bench press, 86th percentile for broad jump. Really, his only thing that he did not above average was his vertical, where he was in the 42nd percentile there. 96th percentile in the 40-yard dash, 64th percentile in the short shuttle, and the 92nd percentile for the 3-cone. So he is an elite athlete, 96th percentile overall as an off-ball linebacker. From a statistical standpoint, didn't exactly stuff the stat sheet. 63 tackles this past year with 1.5 sacks, 2 passes defended. Year before that, 43 tackles and a sack. Year before that, 23 tackles, 2.5 sacks. And then in his, basically his freshman season, I should say, 6 tackles, nothing else on the stat sheet there. So 5 sacks overall, 2 passes defended, and the rest were just tackles. No fumble recoveries, no forced fumbles, no interceptions, no touchdowns, etc. So again, didn't exactly stuff the stat sheet. In pass coverage, 37 of 44 in passes coming his way, 258 yards total, no touchdowns, no interceptions with those 2 aforementioned pass breakups. So again, statistically, didn't exactly knock your socks off, but this is a traits-based player. This is a very, very, very much Green Bay style first-round draft pick. The only thing that was missing was that premium position, which generally, again, for Green Bay, they have not valued off-ball linebacker in that realm, but you're talking about age, big-time college, extreme athleticism. All the traits are there on tape. The flash plays are there on tape. This screams Green Bay Packer, Brian Gutekunst style player. Everything except, again, being off-ball linebacker. So what are the positives on Quay Walker? The first, as I've sort of mentioned already, and as you know by now, are the traits. He has everything. There is nothing that he is lacking. If you're betting on this sort of player, you're hoping that he's going to become a better NFL player than even he was in college, because he has everything that you would possibly look for in an off-ball linebacker. I mentioned this yesterday, but what you're ultimately looking for, the different things that you want in an off-ball linebacker: of course, tackling ability. You want the ability to get sideline to sideline, drop in coverage, maybe play some man coverage on a tight end or a running back from time to time, spy the quarterback, disguise some things, blitz, like everything that you want an off-ball linebacker to do. Quay Walker has shown in some capacity, at least in flashes, that he can do. There's nothing at the NFL level that if he hits, if he reaches his ceiling, or not even his ceiling, but like if he uses his traits to his advantage that he can't do at the NFL level. He has all of it. He has everything that he needs and more to be a very successful linebacker in the NFL. And this is the biggest, I would say, not misconception, but it's the biggest disconnect between so many people who are watching the film cut-ups and telling you about prospects and what scouts are doing. It's not difficult. It's not super difficult to watch tape and to tell you what a player did well and what they didn't do well. A lot of people could really probably do that. Maybe not to the extent that a lot of the people that are doing that sort of thing are doing it at. Like, it's not that easy, but anyone can tell you, for the most part, what they saw on tape and what a player did well and what they didn't do well. The harder part is projecting what they are going to do in the NFL. And that's what the scouts and GMs are paid the big money to do. And they get it wrong a lot of times as well. But that is the difficult part, because we have seen a multitude of players who have put tremendous tape out there in college and tremendous statistics and put every, record and accolade and Heisman Trophy, and they get to the NFL and they're terrible. They just can't cut it. Whether it's they were overconfident in college or never progressed, never took the next step, were missing a key piece to play a specific position, whatever that may be, it doesn't always translate. Great college players don't always make great NFL players. And we've seen a multitude of players who have come. Hey, look at Sam Shields. Dude was playing wide receiver at Miami. Comes to Green Bay, moves to corner, and immediately plays incredibly well. Like, there's a multitude of players who are changing positions or are, mediocre players in college, don't have the production, don't have something, and they come to the NFL and they become amazing players. So that is the tough part of the process. It's not showing you what they did in college. It's showing me what they're going to do when they get to the NFL. And this is a traits-based player, which Green Bay looks for in the first round all the time. They did it again with Devontae Wyatt, although the age was a little bit off. They did it with Christian Watson. Those first three picks were traits-based players, guys that have incredible ceilings because, again, there's nothing that they are lacking from a height, weight, speed, athleticism, strength, all of it. All three of those players have that in spades. Now it's just translating it on the NFL level. Green Bay is betting that their program, their strength and conditioning, their coaching, their system is going to bring out the best in those traits-based players. And again, you're hoping that Walker is going to be even so much better in the NFL than he was in college, because again, just based on his college profile statistically, and when you're watching him on tape, you're not immediately, it doesn't scream first round pick, right? But his talent very much does. And again, he can do anything that you want an NFL linebacker to do. Whether he can do it well, whether he can do it consistently, will be the difference between, is he a small upgrade from Chris Barnes, or is this a potential Pro Bowl or maybe even all-pro linebacker down the road? The gap there is massive, but I do think he has that sort of ceiling, and I think his floor is also relatively high. I think immediately he's going to be an upgrade at that second linebacker position from Chris Barnes, but we'll get into that more in just a moment. As far as his other positives, he is a very clean mover. He is so freaking fast, and this is football fast. This is on the tape fast. This is not 4.40 speed where you go and watch the tape and are like, are you sure? Are you sure he didn't test 4.6, 4.7? He is football fast. And there are a multitude of plays. If you want to go to my Twitter, I posted a couple of them out there where he is just running seemingly faster than everyone else, where everyone else just seems to be jogging along, and he is a freight train running at 1,000,000 miles per hour in a very good way. Not out of control. He plays fast, but he is a clean mover, not just straight line. He has the ability to backpedal. He has the ability to scrape left and right, down the line, whatever he needs to do. He can move laterally. He can do it all. Whatever he needs to do from a movement standpoint, he can get anywhere he wants, right? So he is a very clean mover. Change of direction is great. Straight line speed is great. Explosiveness is great. All of those things, check, 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 check. You're checking all of those boxes. So as a linebacker in today's NFL, Yeah, you would love somebody that just has the strength to take on a block and go make a play in the backfield. It's not the name of the game anymore. You're hoping those defensive linemen are going to keep your linebackers clean, and you want linebackers who can explode to the football, get sideline to sideline, get back in the middle center of the field if you're in cover two and you need to cover the middle of the field. Like, you want all of those traits, right? And again, Walker has them in spades. He's stronger at the point of attack, too, than you would give him credit for. Now, I don't think Walker is necessarily the guy that's going to come in and just immediately, like, violent hands, stuff an offensive guard or a center at the point of attack, and then just shut him to the side and go make a play. But you will see him hold up at the point of attack and be what I would call slippery at the point of attack, where he's not going to get pancaked. He's not going to get thrown to the ground. And he makes it very difficult for offensive linemen to get a clean shot on him and control him. He's an uncontrollable player more often than not for opposing offensive linemen. He's not going to necessarily, again, use strong hands and punch and shed that block. Very few linebackers are. But he has the quickness and the slipperiness to get around those blocks. There's so many linebackers that will just try to avoid that block. That's not Walker. He's not avoiding that block and trying to go around. He's taking them on, and then it's not a strength thing, but it's, like I said, more of like a slippery thing, like where he's able to get off that block and go make a play. And that sets him up well. But overall, that's a better play strength than you would than you would expect from a linebacker with that sort of profile, who's able to play so fast and so explosive and change directions the way that he can. Those are rare things. When you're picking in the first round, you're looking for some rare traits, and there's no question about it. Quay Walker just has a lot of different little things that you don't find in one linebacker very often. And that's what makes him so tantalizing, and that's why Green Bay wanted to take him at pick 22 and not wait to see if he's going to be there at pick 28, etc. So I certainly understand the pick for a variety of reasons. He also has great range, sideline to sideline, can get back in coverage. As we mentioned, that all kind of goes with being a clean mover, but he has great length as well. Again, 6'3", almost 6'4", in the 94th percentile for height. I've talked about this in the past, but in cover two, and with his size and his length and his height, when you're in the middle of that defense, when you're a quarterback, you're a lot of times your first read's middle of the field, right? Like, you're looking middle of the field, now you see this big linebacker. There's a difference between a 6 foot, 5'11", whatever linebacker that's roaming the middle of the field and a near 6'4" guy. It may not seem like a lot, but when you're trying to get those balls over the linebacker, or like between the linebacker and the safety, etc., and some of those tight holes, well, guess what? The 6'4" guy has a big advantage there. And if you're playing some cover two defense and you need that guy to run the length of the field, again, it makes it so much more difficult when you're going against a 6'4" guy. The window just gets that much tighter. And guess what? It makes it even more difficult when he's a 6'4" guy that runs a 4'5", 240. So again, he has rare traits for his specific position, and that's just going to make him a very talented player that Joe Barry is going to be able to use in a variety of different directions. Next up, I will say he plays within himself, doesn't overcommit himself, plays under control, and he is very much a do-your-job player. Guess what? Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean and, obviously Tavon Walker, like, those guys were getting a lot of the credit up front. Those guys were a lot of the playmakers on this defense. Sometimes you need a guy to be a little bit more unselfish and just do his job so that those playmakers can go make plays. Now, Quay had opportunities to go make plays as well, no question about it. But he did such a great job of not trying to, overcommit and overplay himself to try to go and be a playmaker. He let those guys do the playmaking, and he did his job to make sure that the defense, held up its integrity, held up at the point of attack, and that there wasn't a way that the offense could counter something because Walker was trying to do too much. I really appreciated that about his game. Again, you will see, like, there's a play I posted on Twitter, and it's one of his big highlights where, they're running a run play outside, and Walker just chases it down sideline to sideline with ridiculous speed. The speed is immediately noticeable. The tackle's immediately noticeable. And just the play in and of itself is a wow play. But what stood out to me on the play is he's in that first gap, and he's he's slowing down, like, just ever so subtly, just making sure they're not cutting through that gap. And then he quickly gets to the second gap, He's doing the same thing. He's slowing down just to make sure, just for a slight second, there's not going to be a cutback there, that he's not giving up the integrity of that gap in that play. How many times have we seen Green Bay on defense have poor gap integrity? He was making sure for Georgia that that was not the case. And then what happens? Now he moves past that and the running back goes to the outside. Now it's see ball, get ball. And now he's like the freaking T-Rex in Jurassic Park chasing down the car, right? Like he is a freak athlete, and he goes and he chases the guy down. And I can tell you right now, I would not want to be chased by Quay Walker from behind, because it was a terrifying sight watching him chase down a running back in that way. Can't even imagine how that would feel. I don't want to know how that would feel. Tackling, fantastic. He's a really good tackler. He plays too upright, which we'll get to in just a moment. And there are ways that he can do a better job of actually form tackling. But from a consistency standpoint, he was a great tackler. He rarely missed tackles. And when he got near someone, very much far more often than not, he was able to get them on the ground. And maybe my favorite thing about Quay is he rallies to the football and he plays team defense. One of the big things I said last year about Joe Barry's defense that felt so different from Mike Pettin, and it felt different very early in the year, was that these were 11 guys playing football together. Mike Pettin's defense at times felt like 11 guys freelancing, doing their own thing and trying to make plays. And Joe Barry's defense felt like 11 guys playing cohesively, rallying to the football, knowing what each other were going to do, and playing team defense. And that's what I think Quay Walker, maybe my favorite trait of his, he is constantly rallying to the football. He is constantly playing team defense. He is constantly doing his job. He is constantly setting others up for success. And this is a player that is going to buy into that philosophy. And with his, again, traits and his athleticism, if you're doing that, if you're rallying to the football, if you're hustling, if you are playing team defense, if you're playing smart, and now again, that comes with a 4.5 40 speed and all of that stuff, you're going to probably be a pretty good player that Joe Barry's going to find a way to use. That's, again, his ability to rally and play team defense, easily one of my favorite aspects of his game. I'd also say that he's not bad at anything. There's a lot that he can improve upon, but I don't think that he's bad at anything. There's nothing I can point to and be like, again, he plays too upright. I'd like to see a little bit better instincts. We'll get into all his negatives in just a second, but there's nothing I can point to and be like, man, he is terrible at that. He's learning. He's getting better in certain things, but I don't think there's anything that he's terrible at. And again, that makes his floor much, much higher, because you're not super concerned about any one trait in his game. Plays with very good balance, stays on his feet, even when going up against 300-pound linemen. He's able to compete, stay on his feet, and a lot of times go make a play. He's also very communicative. He is a player on that defense that's telling other players what to do, making sure that everyone's on the same page. And I think that's going to help him potentially long-term be a guy that's wearing the green dot on the back of the helmet. I can see him being a captain on defense. I can see him being a guy that's calling the plays. He seems to have that mentality and that wherewithal to make sure that the defense is aligned and all on the same page. That's all, for somebody who hasn't even turned 22 yet, in a defense full of stars and studs, that's an impressive trait. So I was impressed with how he was communicating on defense. I also think he can help as a disguiser for Joe Barry. When he's on the field, I don't think, as an offensive coordinator, as a quarterback, you're going to feel super confident in what, Quay Walker may be doing on a play. He might be in zone, he might be in man, he might be spine, he might, blitz, he can just do a little bit of everything. So, there's a play where he's covering Treylon Burks in the slot. I wouldn't even put it by him. If you wanted to run some crazy play where everyone's sort of in an amoeba defense and you can't really ID who's doing what, if you all of a sudden flash back and all of a sudden Savage and Quay Walker were your two safeties for on a disguise, I think you'd probably get away with it for a play or two. So I think I think they're going to be able to disguise a lot of different things with Quay Walker. And as this Joe Barry defense wants to do a lot of things right before the snap of the ball or right after the snap of the ball to make things ultra confusing for quarterbacks and offensive coordinators and offenses in general, I think there's a good chance that Quay Walker can be a big piece and really making it difficult to understand exactly what Green Bay is doing on defense. As mentioned, he plays fast but under control, but he is also a very safe linebacker. Again, he's a consistent tackler. He's not overcommitting himself. He's playing team defense. In a way, I kind of equate it to what Adrian Amos was to Eddie Jackson in Chicago. And I mentioned this when I did a deep dive into Amos as he came from Chicago to Green Bay. I didn't think Eddie Jackson was going to be the same once Amos left, and that has very much been the case because Amos's consistency allowed Eddie Jackson to freelance and do a ton of different stuff. Like his demeanor and his safeness at safety, he put the safe in safety, allowed Eddie Jackson to go around and play like a madman, which was what Eddie Jackson did really well. Amos left and Jackson's never been the same since. And I saw the same thing a little bit at linebacker. Quay Walker's consistency and his mentality was able to set up a lot of the other guys on that defense for success. So I think he can be somebody that if you need him to be a playmaker, he can, but he plays under control. He plays safe. He's not going to make a lot of catastrophic mistakes. And I think it's going to set up guys like Nakobe Dean. It set up guys like Nakobe Dean in college. I think it's going to set up guys like Devondre Campbell in Green Bay up for success. You can also very much tell that he cares. Again, you can tell that he could be somebody that wears the green dot eventually. And he played 542 special team snaps at the University of Georgia. So if Green Bay decides that, hey, we've got Campbell, we've got Chris Barnes, we're okay with this guy playing a lot of special teams early in his career, he could be somebody that really makes a major difference with Rich Bisaccia on teams. All right, so what are his negatives? Why was this not a consensus top 20 player? And, why in the mock drafts were people not putting him at pick 22 or higher? Well, the first thing is impact, right? We talked about it already. 5 sacks total, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries, no interceptions, no touchdowns. You're having a lack of impact plays, a lack of playmaking. And I think that the two questions I would ask for you is, did you feel his presence, A, and B, did offensive coordinators have to game plan for Quay Walker? And I would say more often than not, the answer to those two questions was no. There are plays on the field that you very much felt Quay Walker's presence, but you can go full games at times at Georgia and not really notice Quay Walker. You're noticing Nakobe Dean, you're noticing Tavon Walker, you're noticing Jordan Davis, you're noticing Devontae Wyatt. You're noticing a lot of those guys. You're not always noticing Quay Walker. His presence isn't always felt in those games. And again, if I'm an offensive coordinator and I'm going against the University of Georgia, yeah, Quay Walker's a good football player, but he's probably not the guy that's keeping me up at night. If I'm picking pick 22 overall, I really would love somebody who is the guy, who is the playmaker, who's the difference maker. Now, again, clearly Green Bay is betting that he can be that guy. Because guess what? If he had stayed or had the ability to stay another season, he probably would have been that guy at the University of Georgia this season after a lot of those guys graduate. But he's not. He was a senior. He graduated. And again, now he's a Green Bay Packer. But Green Bay is definitely thinking that those traits at his age are going to get better and better. And he's going to be a better, more impactful NFL player than he was even in college. The other thing I would say is just instincts and anticipation. Now, I've seen people say that he looks lost on defense. That's ridiculous. He does not look lost on defense. But I do think the best off-ball linebackers are the ones that have just a sixth sense for what's going to happen before it even happens. They can anticipate, they're taking a step in the direction that the play is going to go before the ball is even snapped. Those are your Hall of Fame, all-pro level linebackers. And I just don't see that level of instincts, and I don't see that, that sixth sense for the position, with Quay Walker. Can he develop it? Yes. Is he young enough that where he can still get there? Absolutely. But I would have liked to have seen, there's not a play on tape in the 8 games I watched that I can point to and be like, watch the anticipation on this play. So there's a lot of great plays on film, but I don't think he's a great instinctual player. And as linebacker, I think that's just a really key trait to have. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it is on the high level either. And again, that could limit a little bit the ability for him to reach his ceiling as an off-ball linebacker. I do think he needs to work on his blitzing. I think his timing can get better. I think he can develop a much better move set as a blitzer. Again, we mentioned it earlier, but he plays far too upright. Needs to get a little bit lower, play with better pad level, play with better leverage, and in a tackling standpoint, not play so high, make it a little bit more easy on yourself to make those tackles. Needs to eliminate false steps and definitely can improve his awareness and coverage, especially down the field. And I think the other thing is you will see some of the eye candy, the motions, the pre-snaps, all of that will give him some trouble from time to time. So he's going to have to be a little bit more disciplined and, again, not taking any false steps in that direction. I've seen some people say like, hey, maybe he could play some edge. And listen, in like a pinch, could he play a couple snaps here or there? Yes, but he is in no way, shape, or form an edge player. This is not a Micah Parsons who can play edge or off-ball linebacker. Again, could he do it in a pinch? Sure, but he's an off-ball linebacker. He's going to play as an off-ball linebacker. Don't expect him to put in, 15, 20 snaps at edge and, being able to pitch in there as well. He just doesn't have that move set. He doesn't have that strength. He's not an edge rusher. He's an off-ball linebacker. Don't expect him to be something that he's not. I think you'd be trying to fit a square peg in a round hole by moving him out to edge on anything more than just a couple plays here or there. And then the last question I have is, can he be the guy on your defense? Again, if I'm picking somebody in the first round, I want at least the potential that they can be like the guy. And again, I do think that potential is there overall, but I do wonder if he is more a really good player on your defense without ever really becoming the alpha and, the guy that changes your defense in a totally different dynamic. Again, when you're using pick 22, those are things that matter. You don't just want a good player. You want the opportunity that this could be a really great player. So again, it's not saying he can. It's just a question maybe more that I have. So what can he bring in 2022? Again, he could be a key special teams contributor. I think he immediately moves into that number 2 linebacker role. I think he gives Green Bay much better depth at linebacker. I think he's a huge upgrade from Chris Barnes from day one. I think, again, he brings a lot of versatility. I think Green Bay could play 60 to 70% nickel defense with Campbell and Walker next to each other. So I think we're going to see a lot of playing time. And going down the line, I think this could be a long-term linebacker for Green Bay, filling in for Devondre Campbell when Campbell's contract is up down, 3 years down the road. And in the meantime, still being a starter. I expect him to be a starter from day one as that second inside linebacker. So I think he has high-end upside. I think he can help right away. I think he has a high floor. I think he has a high ceiling. And I think there's a lot to be excited about with Quay Walker. Again, the best thing I can say is I do think, and I know Green Bay thinks, that his best football is still ahead of him. Last but not least, my overall thoughts on the pick. I like the pick. I don't necessarily know that I love the pick. But I don't know that there's anyone there at 22 that I would have been jumping out of my seat and being like, heck yeah, they got that. I really like George Karlaftis, but he went 28 or 30, I don't know, whatever, 30 to Kansas City, I think. So, obviously he went much lower, 8 picks lower than pick 22. Dax Hill would have been fun. There's some players that I liked, but there's something that I would have been able to point to in this for everyone that said, like, here's why maybe this doesn't work out, right? I like Walker. You can question whether off-ball linebacker is the best value at that specific place at that specific time, but I think he's going to be a really key piece in this Joe Barry defense. I think they want to run 2 linebackers. I think they saw what Levante David and Devin White could do next to each other in Tampa. And I think this is going to be a really key piece to Green Bay's identity moving forward. A lot will depend on if Walker hits, but I like him as a player. I totally get picking him at the spot that they did. Again, maybe not exactly what I would have done, but not necessarily what I wouldn't have done either. So, like the pick. I can understand it. I'm excited to see what he brings to Green Bay. I think there should be a lot of excitement over this player and what he could potentially become long term. That is going to do it for me today. Always appreciate you listening. I'll be right back here tomorrow, I believe, and hopefully with a Devonte Wyatt deep dive. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.